Hello, it's Dawn Michelle from Boho Tarot, and welcome to another mod with me. Today we are going to be trimming and edging the Black Moon Astrology cards. So this was a deck that I saw on Tracy's channel, Becoming Temperance, and she had shown this deck in one of her, I think it was her September monthly deck roundup, and she talked about how the book was really helpful in terms of astrology, and that the cards worked well, but really the book was the fabulous thing about the deck. So as learning astrology and sinking a little bit deeper into that is one of the things that I wanted to do, I went ahead and picked up a copy of this deck. And as soon as I opened it, like, my first thought was, oh, those borders, they've got to go. They don't even match. Like, if they were black or even if they were white, I think it would look better than this kind of vintagey beige color they have going on. And the backs are completely borderless, so the backs are beautiful. It is that glossy cardstock. This is a Blue Angel deck. And I have seen this deck trimmed, and it looks really beautiful. I think it makes the cards and the artwork really stand out. Whereas I think this beige kind of blah border really kind of just washes out these images and tones them down. And I think you don't even really get a chance to appreciate how beautiful they actually are. I mean, it is computer generated artwork, but it's quite pretty, but I don't think you really get that sense of it because you're just like, the beige is like, it's blah, right? If this were, a kind of old worldy antique style deck, that would work really well. But in this case, I think like even stark white would have been better than this beige. I mean, it does match some of the cards, but to me, beige just does not have a, astrology feel to it. I get that it's mostly statues and all of that. Now, I haven't read the guidebook at all. Like, I actually just got this deck and I just opened it a couple days ago. And we definitely have some sort of vintagey kind of things going on in the background, but I still feel like the borders just in general, I feel like wash this deck out, and you just can't appreciate the vibrant colors in these cards. So, of course, as per my usual style, I'm going to take them off. And I promised Tracy that I would make a video on it. So that is what we are going to do today. We are going to take off the borders, and then we're going to edge this deck. Maybe we'll do some multiple colors. Not entirely sure yet. We'll see when we get to that point. So let's head on over to my crafting table and get started. So for this trim, I have my usual suspects. I have my cutter, I have my washi, and I have my deck. So for this one, I'm going to, repeat my normal process, and I am going to trim this deck one side at a time to get it as even as possible. And I'm basically just going to remove the borders. I'm not going to do anything fancy. I think that the circle in the center should remain intact because it looks like it doesn't quite bleed over into the border area, but we shall see when we clip the front of the cards. I'm really not that worried about the back of the deck. I'm more concerned with getting the fronts looking a little more like I'd like to see. So these cards I noticed, all have a slight, they do all have a slight inner border that does sort of match the color. But as I've mentioned before, I'm not going to try to retain that inner border, because if I manage to cut all four sides right up against that inner border, and I do a fantastic job of it and it's perfectly lined up, there's no guarantee that when I go to corner round it, that my corner cutter is going to trim exactly around that border, and most likely it's not going to cut it perfectly, so I'm going to end up with it clipping off part of that inner border anyway. So I'm just going to take it off right from the get-go. It's also going to make this deck a little bit smaller, which for me is always a good thing because I have a hard time with larger decks. So I'm basically going to put this right inside that inner border, mark it with my washi, make sure that that is where I want it to be. These cards are glossy. Sometimes the glossy decks have a tendency to slide around on the trimmer. So what I'm gonna do as I'm trimming is try to make sure that I'm holding down both the top and the bottom so that as the blade goes through it, it's not, I think I need to move in just a little bit more. So that as the blade goes through it, it's not moving the card. Because sometimes as you put pressure on, particularly with, you know, a thicker deck, as you're putting the pressure on with the trimmer, it has a tendency to shift the card one way or the other. So to help combat that, I am going to press down on the top and the bottom of the little protector here and make my cut. And this is a little bit thicker cardstock, so, and really my trimmer isn't having trouble going through it. I'm just trying to do it slowly so I don't shake the camera. But there you can see I got off the outer border and that inner border. Just double check it, and I think that's gonna work just fine. So we'll do one more card here. I'm actually not quite on a line, which is not really where I want to be, but I like to be on the these longer lines is really where I like to be, because it allows me to line the entire card up, but sometimes the borders don't cooperate with that, and you got to make do, and that's where the washi comes in really handy. So making sure that I am lined up. And that one came off just fine. So I'm going to finish up this side and then we'll check back in. Okay, so I finished trimming the right side, and you know, I did a fairly good job. There were a couple places where I let the card slip a little bit, so it's not 100%, but it's close enough, and I can kind of use my cuts on the other side to fix that. I did have to trim off, so if you can see here, there's a few that I had to fix a little bit. Oop, straggler. So now we're basically going to repeat the process on the other side, and find a paper towel to give my blade a wipe. Okay, so now we are just going to get our measurements going on the other side, and there were a few places you can see here where I got really close to the words, but I think it's going to be okay. Just on some of the cards, the words are going to be, they're going to be right there at the end. So I'm going to try to get a little bit more even on this cutting, just so I don't have to go back and fix. Hopefully that is not going to be enough. And this deck is just gonna have to be in between marks, because I don't want to get too dang close to those words, but I gotta be able to get that inner border off. And some decks, some decks are easier than others. Thankfully there aren't a ton of cards in this deck, and I think there's like 52, maybe. I think there's 52. So let's try that. That's looking a little bit closer. Yep, I'm right up against that border, and you can see there, and it's going to be on all of the element and the house cards. I think all that text gets pretty close to the edge, but I think as you can see, like, I'm going to run right up to it, but I'm not going to run over it, so it should work just fine. Let's do one more. There we go. Okay, so that's working out. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish taking off this side, and then we will check back in. Okay, so I have the other side trimmed. So you can see now that I've got the sides off both ways. And now we're going to go ahead and just trim the top off. Actually, change of plan, because it just occurred to me that I have more playroom on the top, right? So what we're gonna do is actually do the bottoms first, because if I don't get my measurements 100% on the bottom, I can kind of adjust on the top, but I can only do that if I have the space to do that. So quick change of plan, we're actually going to trim the bottom first, and we're gonna take off, I don't think there's any border on the bottom. There is not. So that is fabulous, because that means we don't have to scooch in really, really close. We just need to get that beige border off. So I think that should be it right about there. And because my board is not quite big enough, we're gonna have to just use washi and go with it. So that looks like it was a good spot. So now, having done the bottoms first, if, like I said, if my dimensions were a little bit off, especially because I don't have a mark, I'm just using the washi as a mark, that leaves me the top area to play to adjust that so that I can get the cards basically the same measurement. Whereas the bottom, I really, like on some of these, man, I've got like no playroom. So those words are right down there at the bottom. So I need to be as careful as I can in trimming that bottom, and then I can use the tops where there are no words, and really none of the pictures go too far close to the top. So that gives me a little bit more, just a little bit more flexibility, a little bit more playroom. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish trimming the bottoms off. And that one isn't straight. And we'll take a look when I'm done. All right, so I got the bottom border all cut off, and like I said, that allows me a little bit more play area at the top to fix any adjustments to the measurements that I might have, because some of these, especially the ones where there's two lines, which of course there's one, some of these got really close to the bottom. So, but it was all good. I didn't cut off any words. So we are all set there. So now I'm gonna go ahead and flip them around and do the tops. And like I said, this will allow me a little bit more playroom in order to get to my measurements a little bit closer. And I'm half tempted to go in and make them a little bit smaller, but I don't want to cut off too much of the artwork. So we'll just go in, and you will go right about here. So just on the other side of that line there. And where I like to really use these longer lines, that, I guess I could, it'll make them a little smaller though. If I did that, what's it gonna do to the back? Not that I really contend much with the back, so that would take that much off. So actually, maybe it wouldn't be such a bad thing to take a little off the top. Let's just take a quick peek. Is there anything super close? Oh, her head. Gotta watch that. So maybe there are a few that might cause issues. So let's just see real quick. So if I went to this line, yeah, I'm gonna cut off that number. I might even be cutting it off if I go to here. Nope, I should just miss it. So we're gonna scoot it back a little bit, because I do just want to take off that border, and I don't really want to, as much as I would like to maybe make these a bit smaller, I'm not gonna I'm not going to risk chopping into the image, so let's start with this one. So that worked quite well. I think it spun on me. Or the printing's not straight. Can we blame the printing? I always blame the printing. It's always the printer's fault. Nope, it was totally my fault because look, I cut that off. So not the printer's fault. It was my fault. But I think that's going to work just fine. I was able to get the whole top border off. So I think right about there is going to be good. And I just need to make sure that I'm keeping it from sliding around on me. So yeah, so I'm gonna finish trimming it up. I think as you can see, like it already looks so much better, and it's a little bit smaller, which is nice. But I think once we get the corners rounded and of course the edges done, I think it's gonna look really good. So I'm gonna finish this up and then we'll check back in. Generally, I would do, on a deck this size, I generally do the large corner rounder. It's a big deck. Larger corners tend to work well on bigger decks. It also kind of softens the deck a little bit. However, there are some of these cards where the text is really close down there in the corner. And I just want to make sure that I'm not going to accidentally crop into my text. I think that one might be the longest. There was one other one that went further down, this one. I think that one will be okay. So basically any of them that have the text flows onto 2 lines, or that the text is really long, as we can see here in these two. So this one, this text comes down pretty close to the bottom. And in this one, the text goes really far to the side. I have misplaced my trimmer sample, so I've trimmed. This is from a Tangled deck that came from the dollar store. A lot of times I use those decks to for practice. So I thought I clipped it off, and I thought I'd just corner around it so that maybe we can see if I'm going to trim off any of those words. If I do, basically, if I see anything coming out over on this side, then that's a good indication that it's not going to work. Although I think the medium would be fine too. In terms of, you know, let's do the medium. We can always do so once I do the medium, I can always go back and do the large and make it bigger. So see, totally works. So if you're ever unsure, you can do one and then the other. And this is fairly thick cardstock, and this is a new corner punch. That one didn't quite get punched. Actually, now that I've done that, I think maybe I like the medium ones. This is why I always test, because if I had done the large right from the get-go, then it would have been too late. I can't uncut. So I think we're gonna go with the medium, because even though the larger tends to soften it, I don't know that we really need to soften this deck. So yeah, let's just roll with the medium. Okay, I've got my stolen shop towels, which I stole out of my husband's garage, because these are great for edging, because they're like cloth, so they work really well. Paper towel works just as great too, but these are fabulous. So I sneak them out of the garage when he's not home. Okay, let's try this. Okay, fingers crossed. Please don't bleed. Please don't bleed, because that really irritates me when it does. Please don't bleed. And I really want to wipe it off really quick so it doesn't have a chance to bleed. That corner is wonky. Need to fix that. Okie dokie. Maybe we might have found a cardstock that my art markers don't bleed on. Oh my goodness. Yay. I mean, I can see a teeny tiny little bit that it bled. but really minimal in comparison. And now I need to fix this corner because it's driving me crazy. And now I need to fix it with a marker. Oh, don't write on the card. Seriously. The marker's not going to bleed on the card. I'm going to write on it. Okay. Someday you guys are all going to tell me, quit babbling while you're doing these. Just show the work. Yeah, so it bled a little bit, but I mean, it is like minimal. I'm having to really look, really search to see where it's bleeding. So let's try the purple. Let's just try, oh, want to find a lighter card. That one's fairly light. I don't know that I'm going to find a real light card because I put the kind of darker cards in this sort of category. I think that one's going to be, Pluto is going to be our tester. So let's see, using the, this one's fairly grooved. Hopefully it will work. Okay, fingers crossed again. These, I do have to say these markers kind of, they do have a scent to them. It's not as bad as like Sharpie, but it's not great. It's not great. It's kind of potent. Hopefully it won't give me a headache because that tends to be what happens. But yeah, that looks like it actually did really well. So that actually makes me happy to find a deck that I can actually use these on, and it's looking like not much of it, if any, is really wiping off. So this might actually be a fairly quick process. While we're at it, let's just go ahead and do one of the blues. So I'm seeing a light one right there. The element of air. That's a good one to try for blue, right? Although I generally associate air with the color yellow, but that's okay. This is going to be a bright color in comparison to the others, so hopefully it will work all right. And because this is blue, and blue has a tendency to rub off, I'm going to give it an extra little swoosh there. And I think that worked out just fine. Okay, so we are good to go with this. I'm going to go ahead and sit and edge these cards. I will not make you watch, and then we'll come back and check in at the end and see how they look. All right, so I have finished edging, well, trimming, corner rounding, and edging this entire deck. So I thought I'd just show you what how it came out. So I did the Crayola blue, and here's those cards. I think they came out looking pretty good. We did the purple for a chunk of them, and then a black for a chunk of them. So we basically did the deck in thirds, but I kind of tried to match the colors to the front as best I could. And I think that overall they look really good. I like the colors. I think it's a good match. But let's go ahead and give them a shuffle, because that is the real trick, right? Do they shuffle? Which of course they still do. They don't shuffle probably quite as well as they did before, but to be perfectly honest, I didn't shuffle them before, so they do still shuffle just fine. And I think that's probably because, as I probably mentioned before, when you trim a deck and you use exact measurements, you get them pretty close, and they do tend to shuffle better that way. So let's just see. I can, not that way. Can still overhand shuffle as well. And now that we've got them kind of mixed in together here, now you can see all those colors mixed in, and I think that looks really cool. These are very glossy cards. So, and you can see how they look all trimmed. I think they look so much better like this. I feel like this is how the deck should have been. without those borders, because I'm just, you know, not sure what the point of those borders were. I mean, I know what the point of borders are. It's to protect the artwork from the wear and tear of use, but you know, most of us, we still like it borderless. So let's lay some down, see what we think. Glossy cards sliding around. Yeah, I think they look much better like this. They are really pretty. It still matches the backs really well. I'm actually quite pleased with how it came out. I think it looks really good. Tracy, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope everyone else enjoyed this video as well, and that you will join me again soon for more creative tarot for an inspired life.